Hello everyone. I want to read another piece from Idries Shah Remembered. And this piece I'm going to read was written by my father's great friend, the writer Peter Brent. I've called it Preoccupation with the Present. Once, about 10 years into our friendship, I travelled with Shah through Morocco. His wife, Kashfi, was pregnant at the time. A handful of us took solace and salvation in the glorious hotel at the Palais Jamai in Fez. One afternoon, we were marvelling at the lovely mosaic fountain in the Andalusian garden there. Shah was explaining to me the tradition of mosaic making, revealing all kinds of subtleties and lifting the veil on an association between the craft and the Sufis' particular brotherhood. All of a sudden, I jabbed the end of an index finger to the central medallion, formed as it was of tiny pieces of colour, hundreds and hundreds of them. I get the feeling that you're like this fountain, I said. You are astonishingly complex, and that while looking at you and being so engrossed in everything you say, I forget that you are made from many tiny fragments of shape. Shah listened to the remark. Then he smiled. Peter, he replied, I wish you knew the terrible burden that rests on my shoulders. The burden that was passed to me by my father, and the burden that I, with time, will pass on to my own children. Many years later, Shah and I were talking and taking tea at the prestigious Athenaeum Club on Pall Mall in London, where he was a member. I couldn't stop thinking back to the first conversations of our friendship and of all the adventures we had experienced together in both East and West. As we sat there, Shah uttered something that I've never forgotten. He said, I wish society would stop being preoccupied with the present. I asked him what he meant. He looked at me hard, as though wondering how to package the idea for an absolute imbecile like me. Then, breathing in hard, he said, the Eastern world is preoccupied with the centuries that came before, the centuries that made their present possible. As you know, they dare not think much about the future because it is the preserve of the Almighty. But here in the Occident, people never stop thinking about the present. They gorge themselves with food in the present, grumble endlessly about their discomfort in the present, and bore each other senseless with conversations in the present. I wish, oh how I wish, he said, that people would forget about the present and instead train their eyes on a fixed point far in the distance and would move slowly towards it. Ever since then, I have found myself doing just that. I have labored hard to create a future for myself and to prepare myself for the months and the years ahead. At the same time, I have found that most of the time it is wise not to share this thinking with too many people, as they tend to question why I'm thinking so differently from them. Having known Shah a good long while, I went on a journey to the Middle East and then on to India for research I was doing on a book. When I returned to London, I called him, but there was no reply on his line. I assumed that he was away, as he had told me he was going to Saudi Arabia again to spend some time in Mecca. A few weeks passed. Then, one afternoon, I was strolling through Whitechapel in the East End of London. It's a rough part of town, even now, with a sizable immigrant population and an awful lot of down and outs. I had gone there to meet someone who was supposedly connected with the subcontinent, who could translate some passages of text I had brought back with me from India. I don't know why, but something drew me in the most bizarre and extraordinary way from the path I was taking on foot. And as if being guided by an outside force, I began walking down a side alley not far from the old poorhouse. Halfway down the alley was a soup kitchen, at which homeless people were being provided with a bowl of piping hot soup and a big chunk of bread. Again, I don't quite know what was going through my mind, but I slipped into the soup kitchen. To my absolute astonishment, Shah was in there serving soup to the homeless. On seeing me, he didn't seem surprised at all. "Hello, Peter," he said in a quiet voice. "I was wondering when you'd turn up." "What are you doing?" was all I could ask. "What does it look like I'm doing? I'm serving soup. Would you like some?" I blushed and laughed, blushed some more, and excused myself. A week later, Shah telephoned me and asked me to meet him down at the River Thames. It was a bitterly cold winter morning, early February, leaden grey skies and oily mist. I reached the rendezvous point on time and found that he was already there, staring out at the slate grey waters, his face sullen. We shook hands, and I asked if he was all right. "There's not much time," he answered, as though providing a solid reason for his rather dour expression. "Not much time for what?" "To accomplish what needs to be done." I paused, lit a cigarette, and hoped the silence would give him time to speak. And he did. In his own time, as the great river's waters eased past us, he explained what was on his mind. "People imagine that what I'm doing is random," he said. "They keep asking me why I'm so fluid and freeform and why I give so much space to move. It's because they have been constrained in their outlook for so many centuries. The shackles and the boundaries need to be removed if they're to learn to rethink, to think for themselves for the first time." Shah rubbed his eyes, and I half wondered whether he might actually shed a tear. He didn't, though. Instead, he continued voicing his thoughts. "I've noticed," he said, "that here in your country, everyone wants to be led, their followers in search of a leader. And as you've seen, they have constantly done what they could to put me on a pedestal and to make me that person. My single ambition is for them to listen to the words I publish in my books, to read them well, the words I express over and over in lectures and on the media. I'm not the message, but rather the mouthpiece. If they listen to what I'm saying, if they really listen," he told me, "they won't need me, and they won't need to follow me or anyone else. I'm giving them a key, you see, a key to open every last lock that binds them." We found a bench and sat there in silence for a long while. After well more than an hour like that, Shah sighed. It was the sigh of a man who was both frustrated and ambitious. I looked into his eyes and I nodded. "I understand," I told him, "and I will do what I can to pass on this thinking to others." Idries Shah, the most unusual, brilliant, and misunderstood man I have ever met, smiled. Then standing up, he thanked me sincerely, and he walked away very fast as though rushing to another pressing appointment far away.